on Monday Night Football. And Juju Smith-Schuster was ready to go. He's ready to dance. Ben Roethlisberger, unfortunately, not ready to do almost anything with the giant cast. Second play of the Steelers' opening drive. Mason Rudolph, the throw. Deontay Johnson, ball's coming out.
It's an outstanding job by the linebacker coming and punching that ball out, but leadership by Juju telling, hey, we'll move on, cover it up.
Steelers have turned it over in 11 straight games, but they'd give up just a field goal and then they would take over. This is James Conner for the touchdown.
I'm pretty sure this is a broken play. I think they just created a play right here. I never believed that James Conner was supposed to leak out there. Great awareness by Mason Rudolph to find him.
He was 17 of 18 in the first half, ensuing Bengals possession, and the defense was all over Andy Dalton all night long.
Well, this is what the Steelers need to do on defense. Rush with those edges, play some good coverage, and let those big boys eat. Great strip sack fumble by Bud Dupree.
Steelers had 8 sacks in this game. And then third quarter we go, and the Steelers getting a little creative without their quarterback. We go Wildcat, and the Bengals didn't seem to have any answers. That's Jalen Samuels, that's James Conner, that's 21 yards. And we set it up on the next play you're going to see again. They're going to be in a Wildcat formation, and the defense doesn't know what to do.
Well, this is 11-on-11 football now. The offense has gained an advantage. Samuels did a really nice job of doing some zone read stuff, reading those defensive ends, and it really worked between him and James Conner.
17-3 the score. Next Steeler drive. Swagoo, how in the world is Johnson this open?
Because people out here point shaving, G. You get paid to play defense. Don't point shave.
43 yards on the touchdown, and Mason Rudolph is fired up.
You go that way. No, you go that way. No. Okay.
24-3 is your score. Bengals, one last chance, but they just had no answers for that Steeler pass rush, which was really the story of this game. And then Mark Barron in the end zone with the game-clinching interception.
Man, how good of a signing has Mark Barron been for this Pittsburgh Steelers defense? So versatile with what he can do. Big-time pickup for them.
27-3, the Steelers get their first win of the year.
It feels really good to handle our business, and we did so tonight. Really just with outstanding effort in all 3 phases. It needs to be a springboard for us as we move forward.
Unbelievable team win. We just, a lot of leadership in the locker room and guys that know how to win, guys that have won a lot of games in their careers, and when we stuck together all week, even though, the rough start, and, our message all week was just stack one and then start stacking more. So that's the plan moving forward.
Listen, for 50 years, the Steelers have been about defense. Last night, they got back to that. The points and yards allowed, the fewest by a Pittsburgh defense since 2011. I mentioned 8 sacks created, their most in a game in nearly 3 years. And I made a joke at the very beginning because it felt like every pass Mason Rudolph threw was like 1 yard down the field. What did you think of the offense last night?
Well, I mean, that's what it was. They were almost like a Pop Warner type of offense. Roll out the pocket, throw the ball short, make sure you protect the football, don't put it in harm's way, all that stuff. So they executed well, and it certainly helped that they were playing the Bengals, but there was nothing that you sit there and go, wow, that was really good. They were efficient and solid as an offense.
Dan, I see it differently. Necessity is the mother of invention, and there's a reason that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record. They were playing 11-on-11 football. You touched on it. And when you're in the Wildcat, you change the math. It's 11-on-11. In 7 snaps, they were for 46 yards. Watching it here, Cincinnati was not prepared for this. This reminded me back in the New York Jet days with Rex Ryan, Brad Smith. Brad Smith leaves. Rex Ryan wants Tim Tebow. Defensive coaches struggle defending this. That's why they want a quarterback that can be productive with the ball in his hands, with his feet.
I agree with that part of it. Give the Steelers credit. They're doing what they can to try and find a way to win games. But it does beg the question, in a division where the Ravens and the Browns are both sitting at 2-2 and have both looked certainly vulnerable, do you buy the Steelers as a contender in the division?
No, and it's partly because of what Mike just said. And then Cleveland and obviously Baltimore are better football teams. But here's the deal with Pittsburgh. Like, the jury's out now. You're going to run the Wildcat. Guess what teams are going to do? They're going to prepare for that during the week. To catch Cincinnati off guard, they had no idea what this offense would be like this particular week. The one thing about the NFL, and literally when you get to this point in the season, it's adjusting to everything you've seen from a team. And that's the reason why we talk so much about New England, because they're able to turn into chameleons. Teams won't be caught off guard now because they know this is a part of the repertoire.
Take a look at that schedule. They get the Ravens in their own building this week. They don't play Cleveland for weeks and weeks now. So the young quarterback maybe gets a little more comfortable. I don't know that anyone is buying Pittsburgh off of last night, but if they beat Baltimore this Sunday, next Monday we're having a different conversation.
Oh, sure, but that is a big if they do that. I would say that I would walk away if I'm the Steelers a little bit concerned that I feel like I have to go to the Wildcat to run the football. Like, this is a team that has one of the best offensive lines in football, and we're reverting to needing the Wildcat to feel like we can at least run the football. If you look at their next 6 games, maybe Miami is in there that you feel good about a team that they can go beat.
Greedy, you said it before. They have a puncher's chance. They have a great front 7. Now they can run the ball, albeit not traditional. And Mason Rudolph can get better. Baltimore's defense is inconsistent. And what do we have?
Yeah, but they're not chasing down Cleveland or Baltimore.
Mike,
no way.
Best of luck with Mason Rudolph.
We'll see. We'll have a conversation about it on Monday if they find a way to win. That was last night. That wrapped up week 4. Meanwhile, Elle, let's get to what was the biggest story of the day.
It certainly was. Raiders linebacker Vontaze Burfict being suspended without pay for the remainder of the 2019 season for his helmet-to-helmet hit on Colts tight end Jack Doyle on Sunday. You're looking at it right now on your screen. Frank Reich reacting to the unprecedented suspension.
When someone, does something like that and attacks one of your players that that's just not supposed to be in the game. And then when it's against one of your players, you naturally have a reaction. I'm just glad they did what they did at the game, and the follow-up action seems very appropriate.
Another year, another suspension, because in the 2015 wildcard game against the Steelers, Burfict had a shoulder-to-head hit on Antonio Brown. He was suspended 3 games for that, for violations of player safety rules. And you go to 2017 preseason game against the Chiefs. His hit on Anthony Sherman resulted in a 5-game suspension, which was reduced to 3 for repeated violations of player safety rules. And then, of course, Burfict suspended for the remainder of this season for his helmet-to-helmet hit on Jack Doyle. The suspension is the longest in NFL history for an on-field infraction. Joined now by Mike Tannenbaum and Dan Graziano. How did we get here, Dan, to this unprecedented suspension?
Well, you just went through it. I mean, it's repeated offenses. This is a player the NFL has talked to in the past, has suspended in the past, has fined in the past, has brought to New York for a meeting with the commissioner and disciplinary officers where they have sat and reviewed tape. Here's what you're doing. Here's why it's wrong. Here's how to do it right. The league is at its wit's end with this player, and obviously a very severe suspension, unprecedented, as you mentioned. There's a thought that it might get reduced on appeal, but it'll still probably end up being a record setter, even if that happens.
And Dan, to your point, I wouldn't be surprised if they reduce the suspension on appeal, but still to a significant number of games. What the league is getting out of this, Eldo, they're sending a very strong message to the rest of the league. This behavior is unacceptable.
How are they sending a strong message, though, when you have a repeat offender and you're talking about the potential to reduce his sentence? Sending a clear message would be making sure that he sits out the entire year, no?
Well, there's grades of this, right? Like if the longest suspension for on-field behavior is currently 3 games, to go all the way to 12, I mean, that's very dramatic. And when you talk about players and the players' union and setting precedents, you don't want it to just be willy-nilly. So I think to Mike's point, the league has come down hard and said, this is how seriously we take this. If there's an appeal that reduces it to something less, it's still going to be something significant, and that should send a message to other players. Look, you talk about missing game checks. That's a lot of money. You talk about missing 5 or 6 or 8 game checks.
He's missed many.
It's not a small thing.
Right. The amount of money is $877,000 that's in the balance. So if he could recruit some of that, that'll be a win for Burfict. But hopefully he's learned the lesson, and this will be the end that we ever talk about this.
There's a lot of hopeful optimism. Hopefully the 4th time is the charm, the 5th time, the 11th time.
I don't know.
Greedy, at some point, you got to wonder, who's going to step in?
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think it actually is the 13th or 14th time that we've had some sort of issue of this kind with him. So I'm glad that we got to hear all of that from the insiders. I want to talk to the football players about the way players view this. This story was developing yesterday. We had a chance to talk about it here on Get Up. And Marcus, I'll start with you as a defensive player. I just want to hear what one player thinks of another player. As we're sitting and watching that video, you and I are just sitting here shaking our heads. It is blatantly dirty stuff. What does a player think of that?
It's horrible. It's disrespectful to the code of the NFL, right? The number one code in the NFL is that we play hard, we play tough, but we're not in this business to end dudes' careers or take away their livelihood. And usually I'm a big proponent and I fight for players. You know that all the time. But in this particular situation, Vontaze Burfict needs to be kicked out of the NFL. And I know people have said that, but this coming from me as a defensive player that is kind of bred and built on the physical, tough nature of how you're supposed to play football, but the intentional trying to, these are things that you are intentionally trying to get dudes ruined for their career. It's a difference in playing hard and these things occurring and players just going extra. We talk about that all the time in the NFL. But to go out, like the one that's most egregious to me is him trying to break Cam's ankle, right? And I remember that play taking place, and I remember having a conversation with a bunch of dudes that played in the league, like, Burfict way out there bad for that. That's the type of conversation we were having. So it's to that point. Like, 13 is, I think, the number.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this get thrown around in the last 24 hours. Well, he's a guy that you hate playing against, but you love having on your team. Really? Yeah. Because what happens if the Raiders are playing the Chargers, right? And one of my boys is Phillip Rivers or Austin Eckler, and Burfict takes a shot at him to his head and intentionally tries to hurt him, and he's laying on the ground, and that's my friend. I spend time with him. Jack Doyle has guys that he is lifelong friends with that are teammates of his, or teammates of Vontaze Burfict's. And so if I'm a teammate of Vontaze Burfict and I now have to watch my friend lay down on the ground in an unconscious state, that's not a guy that I want on my football team. And we have to stop talking about the taking away guys' careers. How about taking away guys' ability to live their life?
He could be taking away guys' careers with the way he's hitting people. And I'll credit Dan Graziano, who said it in the meeting. His teammates, Vontaze Burfict's teammates in Oakland this year, named him a captain. He was voted a captain. So the other guys on his team obviously see things in him that they like. But at some point, someone has to do something. He has facilitated the greatest coup of the NFL with the personality off the field. All the things I've heard out of Oakland, he's a great teammate. But when you see stuff like this, it's just so disrespectful to what we stand for as players when it comes to that particular situation. Vontaze Burfict has been breaking the code, and this is another example.
And ask yourself this: what has he done to prove that he does want to be in the NFL?
He don't. And then you walk off blowing kisses and laughing. And to me, that's like not only spitting in the face of the guys that you've done this to, but it's also spitting in the face of the league that's giving you 13 chances. So we'll see. Graziano will be working the phones all morning long to see if there's any movement as far as the appeal is concerned. Meanwhile, Elle, what else do we have?
Yeah, before he starts working the phones, Dan Graziano is going to fill us in with some news and notes from around the NFL. I want to start with Chicago. We saw Mitch Trubisky